They fired the school bus driver, then his old notebook saved the children. My name is James Carter, and for 11 years, I drove the yellow school bus on Route 6. People think a school bus driver only takes children from one place to another. They see the uniform, the keys, the bright yellow bus, and the stop sign folding out beside the road. What they usually don't see is everything a driver has to. Rememberwhich road floods first after a hard rain, which bridge freezes before the others, which children need to sit near the front because they get carsick, which child is quiet because he is tired, and which child is quiet because something is wrong at home. A bus route is more than a line on a map sometimes. It is the difference between getting everyone home and never getting home at all. I learned that long before I became a school bus driver. For 26 years, I served in the Army as a transportation specialist. I drove supply convoys, moved people through difficult terrain, and helped organize emergency evacuations when roads disappeared underwater, mud, or snow. I never thought those skills would matter again after I came home. Then my daughter passed away, and my granddaughter Emily came to live with me. Emily was 12 years old, curious about everything, and far too good at noticing when I was pretending to be fine. She kept a small notebook of her own. In it, she wrote down questions she planned to ask people when they were too busy to answer. Why do you check the bus tires twice? She asked me one morning. Because the first check is for the tires, I said. The second is for my peace of mind. That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense to a bus driver. She rolled her eyes and climbed aboard. The bus smelled like rubber, fabric seats, and the coffee I carried in a metal travel mug. The heater made a clicking sound whenever it turned on. The windshield had a thin crack near the lower corner that maintenance had promised to replace. I knew every sound that bus made. I knew every turn on Route 6, and I knew every child who rode with me. There was Marcus, who always forgot his lunch. There were the twins Ava and Emma, who argued every morning and protected each other every afternoon. There was little Noah, who sat behind me and asked the same question every day. Mr. James, are we almost there? Sometimes we had just left his street. I always gave him the same answer. Almost. The children laughed at that. Noah never did. Emily did not ride my bus. She attended a different school, but she often waited for me at home in the afternoon. She liked hearing about the route and the people on it. You talk about those kids like they're your family, she told me. Once, I spend more time with them than I spend with most adults. That is not an answer. It's the only one I have. The trouble started with a boy named Tyler Reynolds. Tyler was 13, smart, athletic, and used to getting whatever he wanted. His father, Mark Reynolds, owned a chain of car dealerships in town. Mark served on the school foundation board and donated enough money to have his name printed on a new athletic building. Tyler usually sat near the back of the bus with 3 friends. They played videos on their phones, shouted across the aisle, and ignored the rules about staying seated. I gave them warnings, then I gave them consequences. One rainy Tuesday, Tyler asked me to stop near the corner of Willow and Pine so he could get off early. That corner was beside an empty construction lot. There was no sidewalk, no street light, and no adult waiting for him. No, I said. Tyler looked up from his phone. What do you mean, no? I mean you're getting off at your regular stop. My house is right there. Your house is 3 blocks away. It's raining. That's why I'm not letting you walk through the construction lot. His friends laughed. Tyler stood up while the bus was still moving. Sit down. I said, I'm getting off. Sit down. Tyler. He ignored me and moved toward the front. I pulled the bus to the curb and opened the interior light. Tyler, sit down and wait until we reach your stop. He stared at me. You're just a bus driver. The words were not new. I had heard versions of them before, but I turned in my seat and looked at him. No, I said. I'm the person responsible for getting you home safely. He sat down, but he was angry. The next morning, Mark Reynolds came into the school office. I knew because Principal Sarah Mitchell called me in before the afternoon route. She was new to the school. She had been principal for less than 2 months, and she was still learning which problems could be solved with a conversation and which problems came attached to a checkbook. She sat behind her desk with a folder open in front of her. "James," she said, "I need to discuss an incident involving Tyler Reynolds. I assumed you did. He says you yelled at him and refused to let him off the bus. I told him to remain seated because the stop he requested was unsafe. His father says you embarrassed him in front of the other students. His behavior embarrassed him." Sarah took a slow breath. "I understand your concern." "No, I don't think you do." She looked at me. "Dad," I pointed toward the window. "Willow and Pine has no sidewalk. There's a drainage ditch behind the construction lot. After rain, the ground turns to mud. If Tyler had slipped back there, people would be asking why the driver let him off. I understand the safety issue." "Then what are we discussing?" She looked down at the folder. "Mr. Reynolds believes you are too rigid with the students." "Rigid?" "He says you treat the route like a military operation." I almost laughed. A school bus is a moving room full of children. Rules are supposed to be rigid. Sarah did not argue. That worried me more than if she had. 2 days later, Mark Reynolds came to the bus lot. He wore a charcoal suit and carried a phone in his hand like it was a weapon. I was checking the emergency door when he approached. "You're James Carter?" he asked. "Yes, my son says you threatened him." "Your son is mistaken. He says you told him you would make sure he never rode your bus again." I told him that if he continued standing while the bus was moving, he would lose bus privileges. Mark stepped closer. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes." "Then you know I expect my son to be treated with respect. Every child on my bus is treated with respect." "That is not what I asked." I closed the emergency door. "Your son is not more important than the other children." His expression hardened. "People like you always think rules make you important. Rules keep children alive." He stared at me, then smiled without humor. "I'll remember that." I remembered it to dot. The following Friday, Principal Mitchell asked me to come to her office again. This time, Mark Reynolds was already there. On the desk lay a printed complaint with several paragraphs highlighted in yellow. Sarah looked exhausted. "James, the district has decided to terminate your contract effective immediately." For a moment, I thought I had misunderstood her. "Because I refused to let a child get off at an unsafe stop because of repeated concerns about your conduct." "Which concerns?" Mark answered for her. "Your attitude, your intimidation, your inability to connect with students." I looked at Sarah. "Do you believe that?" She didn't answer immediately. That was an answer too. I reached into my pocket and placed my keys on the desk. "Can I finish today's route?" Sarah looked surprised. "James, the children are expecting me." Mark shook his head. "This is exactly the problem. He thinks he is indispensable." I picked up my jacket. "No," I said. "I think children deserve to know who is driving them home." I walked out. Before either of them could respond, that afternoon was my last. The children knew something was wrong. Kids always know more than adults think they do. When I pulled into the first stop, Marcus ran onto the bus. "Mr. James, are you mad?" "No." "Are you sick?" "No." "Are you moving?" I looked at him in the mirror. "I'm not moving." He sat down, but he did not look satisfied. At the next stop, Ava and Emma got on without arguing. That alone told me they were worried. When we reached the school, Tyler was the last student to leave. He stood at the front door. "Are you coming back Monday?" he asked. I looked at him. "Why do you care?" He lowered his eyes. "I didn't know they would fire you. You asked them to." "I just told my dad what happened." Sometimes, telling only part of what happened can cause a lot of damage. He swallowed. "Were you really trying to keep me safe?" "Yes." He nodded once and walked away. I drove the empty bus back to the lot. I parked it in the same space where I had parked it for 11 years. Then I gave the keys to the transportation supervisor. At home, Emily was waiting at the kitchen table. She had already heard. "Did they fire you?" she asked. "Yes." "Because of the rich kid?" "Because of a complaint." "That means because of the rich kid." I took off my jacket. "Emily." "What?" "I don't want you talking about people that way." "Why?" "They talked about you that way." I sat across from her. She looked angry enough to cry, which was how she handled most feelings she did not yet know how to carry. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'll find something else." "You're 61. I'm aware you hate sitting." Still, I'm aware of that too. She noticed the old brown notebook sticking out of my work bag. What's that? Nothing. That is never true when you say it like that. I pulled the notebook out and placed it on the table. The cover was cracked. The corners were soft from years of use. Inside were maps, numbers, weather notes, road conditions, and handwritten reminders. Emily opened it carefully. What are all these lines? Flood zones. Why do you have flood zones? Because roads can disappear. She turned a page. There were sketches of bridges and drainage ditches. Some pages were dated 15 years earlier. You wrote all this? Most of it. Why? Because I needed to remember. Remember what? I closed the notebook. We're not to drive. She studied me. You're doing the thing again. What thing? Answering the question you wish I had asked. I looked away. Emily was right. The notebook began during my Army years. I had started writing down alternate routes after a convoy was delayed by a flash flood. Later, I added road elevations, bridge limits, emergency exits, and places where radio signals failed. After I came home, I kept writing. I wrote down the roads around our town because I had learned a simple lesson overseas. A map tells you where a road is. It does not always tell you whether the road will still be there when you need it. For 2 weeks after my dismissal, I applied for driving jobs and maintenance work. I received polite rejections. A few people told me I was overqualified. Others told me I was too old. One company asked if I had experience with computerized routing systems. I said yes. They asked if I could work for half of what I had earned as a school bus driver. I said I would think about it. I did not tell Emily that I spent most nights staring at the ceiling. Then the rain came. It began on a Wednesday afternoon with a low gray sky and a forecast for thunderstorms. By evening, the rain was falling hard enough to drown out the television. Emily stood at the kitchen window. Is this normal? She asked. No. How do you know? The gutters are overflowing, but the creek hasn't risen yet. That sounds like a good thing. It means the water is going somewhere else. At 6:40 p.m., my phone rang. It was Principal Sarah Mitchell. I almost didn't answer. James? She said when I picked up. Double quotes. Yes. Are you near a map? I looked at the notebook on the table. Why? The afternoon activity bus left 20 minutes ago. It's carrying 14 students from the middle school to the community center. Who's driving? David Collins. Where are they? Somewhere near County Road 8. We lost contact with the bus. I stood up. What happened? The road near Willow Creek is flooded. David says the water is rising. My hands were already opening the notebook. Did they cross the low bridge? I don't know. Find out. I'm trying. Sarah, listen to me. If they are near Willow Creek, they cannot continue toward the community center. Why? The road drops behind the old grain elevator. The water will reach the pavement before it reaches the bridge. If the bus turns around there, it could slide into the drainage channel. She was silent. You know the area? I know every foot of it. Can you help me? I can try. The next 40 minutes became a series of phone calls. Sarah contacted emergency services. I spoke to the transportation supervisor. The sheriff's office sent a truck toward County Road 8, but the main access road was already blocked. The bus driver, David Collins, called through a weak connection. His voice was strained. James, I've got water across the road. How deep? Maybe 6 inches. Do not drive through it. I can see the bridge. You cannot see the road under the water. The connection crackled. Where should I go? I opened the notebook to a page I had written 12 years earlier. There was an old service road behind the grain elevator. It led to a county maintenance yard on higher ground. The entrance was hidden by a line of trees, and the road had not been used in years. It may be overgrown, I told him, but there's a service road behind the elevator. I don't see it. Turn the bus toward the gravel lot, not the bridge. The kids are scared. Tell them to stay seated and keep their belts fastened. James, I was told not to take directions from you. I closed my eyes. Then don't take them from me. Take them from the road. Another voice came through the phone. It was Principal Mitchell. David, do what James says. The bus moved slowly. For several minutes, there was only static and rain. Then David spoke again. I found the Trees, look for 2 old concrete posts. I see one. Keep going. There's a gate. Open it. It's locked. I turned to Emily. Call the county maintenance office. Now. She grabbed her phone. I gave Sarah the number of the maintenance supervisor and told her where the gate key was kept. 10 minutes later, a county truck was headed toward the service road. The bus remained still while the rain hammered its roof. Inside, 14 children waited in the dark. David kept the engine running. I stayed on the phone. Tell the students to look at the ceiling, I said. What? Tell them to count the emergency lights. Give them something to do. David repeated the instruction. A child asked if they were going to drown. David did not answer quickly enough. I spoke through the phone. Tell them no. David pressed the phone closer. You're not going to drown, he told them. We're waiting for help. I listened to the rain and watched the watermarks in my notebook. The creek had risen faster than I expected. I remembered a flood from years ago, when I had been stationed overseas. A school bus had become trapped near a flooded road. The children had been frightened, and the adults had made the mistake of moving too quickly. Panic made people choose the most visible road instead of the safest one. I had learned then that rescue was not always about speed. Sometimes, rescue meant refusing to move until the right path appeared. At 8:02 p.m., the county truck reached the gate. The maintenance supervisor unlocked it, and the bus moved onto the service road. The road was narrow, muddy, and covered with branches, but it climbed uphill. Keep the wheels straight, I told David. Do not follow the water downhill. The children stayed quiet. The bus climbed slowly through the trees. At 8:19 p.m., David said, We're on higher ground. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. Then the children began to cry. Not from fear this time, from relief. The bus reached the maintenance yard at 8:27 p.m. Emergency workers met them with blankets and flashlights. All 14 children were safe. No one was injured. I put the phone down and realized my hands were shaking. Emily stood beside me. You knew exactly where to send them, she said. I knew where the water would go. Sarah Mitchell came to my house later that night. Her hair was wet from the rain, and she held my old notebook in both hands. I found the records, she said. What records? Your route reports, the flood warnings, the alternate roads. You gave the school transportation department copies of these notes 3 years ago. I gave them to maintenance. They were never added to the official route maps. She opened the notebook to a marked page. You warned them about Willow Creek. I warned everyone. Not everyone listened. She looked down at the pages. James, I made a mistake. I didn't say anything. I let Mark Reynolds pressure me into firing you. You signed the decision. I know you didn't. Ask the other drivers what happened. I know you didn't read my safety reports. I know. Her voice became quiet. I saw you as a problem to manage instead of a person who had spent his life protecting people. I looked at the notebook in her hands. What happens now? The district wants you back. I almost laughed. Because 14 children came home safely? Because you knew how to bring them home. I was fired 2 weeks ago. I know. Children need more than a driver who becomes important during a crisis. She nodded. That's why I'm asking you to help redesign the emergency transportation plan for the district. The next morning, the story reached the local news. By lunchtime, a reporter had found the old evacuation records from my army unit. I did not know how she had obtained them. I did not want the attention. The headline called me a hero. I disagreed. Heroes were the emergency workers who drove through the storm. Heroes were the bus driver who kept 14 children calm while water rose around him. Heroes were the children who stayed seated and followed instructions. I had simply remembered a road. Mark Reynolds came to my house 3 days later. He stood on the porch without his suit jacket. He looked smaller than he had at the bus lot. I owe you an apology, he said. I waited. He rubbed his hands together. Tyler told me you yelled at him. He didn't tell me why you stopped him. No, I should have spoken to you first. Yes. He looked past me toward the living room. Tyler has been asking if you're coming back. What did you tell him? That I didn't know. I nodded. Mark looked down at the porch. Thank you for helping the bus. You're welcome. He seemed to expect something else, forgiveness. Perhaps reassurance, a statement that everything was fine. But some apologies need time before they become trust. Before he left, he turned around. Was my son safe because of that notebook? Your son was safe because the driver listened. Mark nodded slowly. Then he walked away. I returned to the school the following Monday. The children were waiting beside the bus lot. Marcus ran toward me so quickly that Sarah had to tell him to slow down. Ava and Emma had made a sign. It said, ***, welcome back. James, ***. The letters were crooked, but I liked them better than anything printed by a professional. Tyler stood at the back of the group. When everyone else had climbed onto the bus, he approached me. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For saying you were just a bus driver. I looked at him. Why do you think that was wrong? He thought about it. Because you knew how to save. U.S. I shook my head. Don't wait until someone saves you too. Respect them. He nodded. Then he climbed aboard. The district gave me a new notebook. It had a blue cover and thick waterproof pages. Emily wrote my name on the first page. Under it, she added one sentence, ***, for every road that leads somebody home. ***. I kept the old notebook too. It remained in the glove compartment of the bus, beside the emergency radio and a flashlight. The school district eventually adopted the alternate routes I had drawn. They added emergency drills, weather training, and a rule that no transportation employee could be dismissed after a safety complaint without a full review. Sarah Mitchell became one of my closest friends. She told me that the old notebook changed the way she saw leadership. Leadership isn't always being the person in front, she said. Sometimes it's knowing who to listen to. Emily became more interested in maps. She asked me to teach her how to read elevation lines and identify drainage basins. I told her most 12-year-olds wanted to learn something more exciting. She said, most 12-year-olds don't know how many people depend on a road. She was right. A year later, the district held a ceremony for the new emergency transportation program. There were speeches, photographs, and a large banner with my name on it. I stood beside the bus while people congratulated me. A reporter asked how it felt to be called a hero after being fired only weeks earlier. I looked at the children climbing onto the bus. It feels unnecessary, I said. Why? Because the children were never waiting for a hero. They were waiting for someone to do the job correctly. The reporter lowered her microphone. What is the job of a school bus driver? I looked at the yellow bus, the wet road, and the small faces in the windows. To get them there, I said, and to bring them back. That evening, Emily and I sat on the front steps of my house. The old notebook was between us. She had spent the afternoon adding colored lines to one of my maps. You marked the dangerous roads in red, I said. Green for safe roads. What does yellow mean? Roads that are safe if people pay attention. I smiled. That's most of life. She leaned against my shoulder. Grandpa? Yeah, were you scared when you went back for those kids in the army? I looked at the notebook. Double quotes, yes. Then why did you do it? Because being scared doesn't mean you stop caring. She was quiet for a while. Do you think people can change? Some can Mr. Reynolds? I don't know. Can Principal Mitchell? Yes. How do you know? Because she admitted she was wrong before anyone forced her to. Emily nodded as if she were writing that down in her invisible notebook. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. Do you think you're a hero? I looked toward the road. A school bus passed in the distance, its yellow body glowing in the late sunlight. No, I said. She sighed. You always say no. Because I don't know what a hero is. I think it's someone who knows what to do when everyone else is afraid. Sometimes a hero is just someone who remembers the right road. That sounds like something you say so you don't have to accept a compliment. Maybe. She smiled. Then accept this one. What? You got them home? I looked at her. Yes, I said. I did. For years, I believed my most important work was behind me. I had driven through dangerous places. I had carried supplies through storms. I had helped people escape roads that were no longer safe when I came home. I thought those years were finished, but life does not always erase what you have learned. Sometimes it hides that knowledge inside ordinary days. Inside a school bus. Inside an old notebook. Inside a road most people stopped noticing. And sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the only person who knows how to get everyone else out. If you have ever been dismissed because of your age, your job, your clothes, or the quiet way you carry yourself, remember this: people often judge what they can see. They do not see the storms you survived. They do not see the skills you built when nobody was watching. They do not see the roads you remember because you once had to travel them in the dark. Do not let someone else's impatience convince you that your experience has no value. Do not confuse a quiet person with an unimportant person, and never believe that a simple job means a simple life. The people who save lives are not always standing in the spotlight. Sometimes they are behind the wheel, checking the mirrors, watching the weather, and making sure every child gets home. My name is James Carter. I am a school bus driver. I was fired because someone thought I was only a bus driver. Then a storm came, a road disappeared, and 14 children needed someone who knew what to do. I still drive Route 6. I still check the tires twice. I still tell Noah he is almost home, even when we have just left his street. And every morning, when the children climb aboard, I look in the mirror and count them carefully, because a route is more than a line on a map. It is a promise, and I intend to keep mine.